Okay. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm just setting the stream up real quick. Okay. Oh, actually, I need to make sure I've got a couple things set up properly. Okay. Wow, a lot of people here already. Okay. Live chat. Okay, and I think super chat is enabled. Okay, I think everything's working. Okay, just give me one last second. Okay, so hey everyone, Dogan here. Sorry for the delay. I thought I haven't done a stream on YouTube in a while, so I thought it might be fun to do one here. And I've had a busy week. Like I'm filing my taxes right now, and well, basically a lot's going on. So kind of trying to take a break, do something a little bit different. So. Glasses, Dogan. Maybe I should take this off. 先生、僕に踏んでください。どういうこと？ Hello, Dogen sama. おはようございます. Also, this is the first time I think that I've ever done a. Okay, so I think Super Chat is working too. I don't know what this means though. This looks. Okay. 色即是 all is vanity. ほう. Yeah, kind of an advanced 四字熟語かな? Yeah, I'm not too good with like really long kanji compounds like that, so. 僕を、そうだね。But yeah, this is the first time that I think I've done a stream during this time. So I thought it'd be maybe a good time for people like on the East Coast, potentially maybe for like viewers in maybe Western Europe and Africa, other places. It might be a little bit too late over there, but certainly I think it's probably okay. I think most people in Japan probably aren't watching right now because it's super early in the morning. I just dropped my kids off at school, but hopefully we can get some new people in here that haven't been in here before. And actually, I am going to put my glasses back on because I can't see the chat. So I just thought I'd try and answer some questions. Thank you, Ramergoon, for the super chat, Ippy Kaye, as well as Gozaru-san. ありがとうございます。何のコーヒーを飲んでいますか？これはコーヒーじゃなくて緑茶です。最近コーヒーを一切飲んでません。一切っていうか、ここ3日ぐらいコーヒーは飲んでないです。朝、なんだろうね。コーヒー飲んでしまうとやっぱ夜寝れなくなっちゃうんだよね、俺は。Thank you for all the streams lately. My pleasure. I actually quite like streaming. And I hadn't done one in YouTube. I think, well, I did the one with Yabatan, but outside of that, for for a bit. So I've been doing them on Twitch a little bit, but I thought it'd be maybe good to do one on YouTube as well. Okay. カフェイン弱い感じか。わかりみが深い。カフェインに相当敏感みたいなんだよね。敏感っていうか、飲んでいたコーヒーが悪いのかな多分。結構大きいやつ毎日飲んでたんだよね。コンビニのやつ。なんだったかななんていうやつだったかな Hello, Dogan from South Dakota. Hey, Pepsi for Pepsi. And also, thank you, PokeFan1 for the super chat. I appreciate that as well. 上手スパム。こちらは朝の指示です。ロシアから挨拶です。ロシア、面白いな。ロシアにすごく興味があるんだよね。なんか、日本みたいに、文化がすごく進んでいるけど、日本とは全く違う文化だし、アメリカとは全く全然違う文化だから、興味深いっていうか、すごく行ってみたいな。文豪の中でロシア出身の人が多いんだよね。There are a lot of really, really famous writers from Europe. Like, I mean, Dostoevsky, God, I can't remember, Tolstoy? ロシア確かに面白いな。Do you know the Japanese monk named Dogen? He made Soutoshu, Soutokyo. And yes, I do know him. He made the temple Eiheiji, and that's where I got my name. So yes, Dogen. 自分の名前の由来は道元から来ています。Yes. So that's where my name comes from. I was really into like Zen during high school. Does your name have a kanji writing, Dogen? Yeah, maybe I'll try and write it here. Can I sign in? Can I do this? Oh, I can't actually put it in. But yeah, it's 道に元気の元Hello from India. It's 5:30 a.m. here. Cool. India. Wow, it's interesting. India as well. Completely kind of similar, like completely different culture, but still very, very, especially in recent years, very, very, well, extremely, the rate of development has been totally insane in India in particular. I think I read an article not too long ago that said that by 2040, might have been 2030, I think that the GDP of India, might have been 2050, I'm not sure, was supposed to be higher than Japan. So I think, that's very interesting as well. 日本人だけど、あなたの今から日本語のレッスンを行います。シリーズが大好きだよ。めちゃくちゃ面白い。ありがとうございます。すごく嬉しいです。ツイッチで IRL 配信試したことありますか？いや、ないです。僕は IRL 配信とかちょっと多分苦手。やったことないから何とも言えないんだけど、多分苦手っていうかうまくできないと思う。私は実はドイツ出身でロシアに住んでいます。勉強が終わったら日本に引っ越すつもりです。勉強が終わったら多分 maybe what you mean to say is 大学を卒業したら or maybe after I graduate. If you say 勉強が終わったら it kind of sounds like when I finish studying. So it kind of like the nuance kind of sounds like when I finish doing my homework today, I plan on moving to Nihon, moving to Japan. So it's probably better if you say 卒業したら once I finish school, once I graduate. ロシアとインドもチェスが得意ね。 なるほど。チェス、なるほどな。道元。Yeah, that's the right kanji for 道元。直人糸。卒業したら、日本、hi Dogen, nice Kiki's delivery service pick you got there. Thank you, Boyle. This Kiki's delivery service is probably my favorite Ghibli movie. And then probably the second place is Spirited Away. It's hard to say. Kiki's delivery service is probably up there though. Dogen, yeah, so that Dogen, with like, is that Genkan? No, Genkan. Yeah, that is not the correct kanji for my name. Well, not my real name, but. おはようございます。道元さんは失礼、僕のクソ日本語、毎日5時間以上は勉強します。一生懸命。この日、日本語なり上手です。この日、日本語なり上手です。日本語の勉強頑張ってください。I'm not entirely sure what you're trying to say, but yeah, you're certainly, well, you're studying for at least 5 hours a day, it seems like, so that's very, very, very impressive. So, 5時間以上。5時間以上はすごいな。俺は5時間以上勉強できないな。その途中でもう倒れちゃうというか。That jumper suits you. LMAO 言ってください。LMAO. Okay. はい、道元。3年ぶりに、日本語を勉強するようにしていますのに、パキスタンから見ています。パキスタンから、すごいな。パキスタンにも僕の視聴者がいるんだ。すごいな。ありがとうございます。嬉しいです。一般の日本人より自分の漢字力が高いと思いますか？いや、全く思えないです。思わないです。漢字がすごく苦手です。発音の知識ぐらいは多分一般の日本人より上かなと思うんですけど、自分の発音自体は一般の日本人よりもちろん低いです。知識だけはあります。Recently passed the JLPT and started to learn Chinese. There's a lot of weebs in China. How do Japanese people feel about China from your experience? It really all depends on the individual. I really hesitate to say like, what do Japanese people? Because you can't just say Japanese people. You have to talk about the individual Japanese people that you've met. So that being said, I have seen that the older generation is a bit more hesitant when it comes to most things related to China. But I think that the newer generation, the more connected generation, they're using things, social media in particular, I would say are much more open and friendly when it comes to things related to China. So, obviously, I don't like the regime in China, the political regime, but I do have a lot of respect for all of the entrepreneurs in China, the Chinese people in particularly that are like really, really working hard. And I know like a fair amount that were, well, back in the States. So, hey Dogen, I'm interested in pitch accent. Where can I find an online resource like Apple's Dictionary where it tells me what pattern each word uses? Look up a resource called Suzuki-kun. If you Google Suzuki-kun, then I think it'll come up. Taiwan as well. Yeah, I would love to go to Taiwan. 日本に住みたいんですけど、アドバイスありますか？It really all depends on your personal situation, but my general advice is I think the key to having a happy life in Japan, well, probably most places for the long term, is to, what would you say, never stop working hard and to use your gaijin card as little as possible. Because the more that you use your gaijin card, I think the more that you subconsciously, what would you say, build a barrier between you and like the normal everyday Japanese people around you, because you're kind of using like this kind of cheap way out in a lot of situations. Um, and I think that in most situations, it's better for the long term if you do the more difficult thing that requires more advanced, maybe Japanese knowledge or knowledge of Japanese culture or whatever. That's certainly the harder thing in the short term, but in the long term, those kind of little doryoku, little efforts over time, often pay out in the long run or long term, I think. What do American people think of Japan? Well, I like Japan. I love Japan. Let's see. トルコから先生と一緒に見てるよ。やっぱりトルコからでも今見てる人がいる。トルコ今何時かな？何時だろう？相当遅いんじゃない？ I feel like it's like, like in either in the middle of the night or early in the morning in Turkey. Your opinion of しょうがない 420. Thank you for the super chat. You're saying しょうがない, right? Is that I think that this is a joke based on the 420 and then also the kanji. Maybe it's an actual phrase and I just don't know it. But しょうがない. Well, I don't know. It's a very Japanese phrase that it's funny because it's like one of the first things that you learn as a Japanese learner, but I rarely use it. ポーランドからおはよう。ポーランドも行ってみてえな。ポーランド probably my favorite classical musician is not probably by far my favorite classical musician is Chopin. So I've always kind of been interested in, well, what would you say? Not by proxy, but been interested in Poland because of that. As someone who appears very critical and methodical about your videos, is the chaotic live stream environment refreshing or tiring? Oh, sorry, I got to answer the other question first. Jacoby, thank you for the super chat. Is it normal for beginners to understand more written Japanese than spoken Japanese? To a certain degree. Oftentimes, the thing about written Japanese is that you can take your time with it, obviously, whereas spoken Japanese, you often your ears aren't used to native speed, so to speak, a rapid conversation, so to speak. That said, I think the main thing that you'll start to realize as you study more is that, and this is true even for your native language in the overwhelming majority of cases, is that you can understand the language at a level above the level to which you can speak it. So like I can understand Harvard professors speaking about advanced topics, but I can't talk like nearly as articulately as them or, as smoothly as them. And that's just because I'm not as smart as them. But the same thing goes for Japanese when you're studying Japanese as well. You'll be able to understand a lot of things that people are saying, even if you aren't able to, initially at least, reproduce those phrases in speech and put the grammar together, so to speak. So, 道元おはようございます。今、配信を見ながら漢字を勉強しています。漢字の勉強頑張ってください。ありがとうございます。As someone who appears very critical, so thank you for the super chat, Silvio, I think. I quite like the dynamic of streaming. I do think it's rather refreshing doing something like this, especially because I mentioned this earlier in the stream, but right now I'm like working on like my American taxes and stuff like that. So I've had a lot of like, what would you say, paperwork and just like doing a lot of stuff in spreadsheets and stuff like this recently. So doing something that's a little bit more, what would you say, social and more dynamic. Again, it's certainly refreshing. So. 日本 住みやすいですか？僕にとってはすごく住みやすいです。こんにちは、道元さん。日本語学校に行くのは日本語の勉強をするのに良いですか？まあ、行かないよりはいいと思うんですけど、目標によって、目標によると思うんですよね。If you wanna, yeah, it really all depends on like your personality and your situation. Like there's a fair number of people that they do better in Japanese schools because there's like a set curriculum. They go to school every day at the same time. They do the same thing. Well, not the same thing, but they've got a path laid out for them. And for some people that works really well, whereas other people, kind of like myself included, and obviously people like Matt versus Japan, and recently one of the guys that I shared on Twitter, Nick, who has phenomenal Japanese, I think there's a certain other type of people that kind of do better studying by themselves. And if you follow kind of the immersion approach, listening to a lot of native Japanese that way, that is also another approach. And I think that if you're motivated enough and that works for you, that's probably the better approach for the long term if you're interested in learning, if you're interested in getting to as high of a level as possible. So, okay. How about the phrase, ごめやこかきます。ごめやこかきます。This sounds like ご迷惑をかけます。Thanks for the super chat again, but I feel like this is like these are like troll posts, or they're just like super. ごめやこかごめやこか. Sorry, don't know what you're talking about. How to learn kanji. It's hard to say. Kanji. I personally think the best way to learn kanji is to use flashcards, not for kanji, but for individual cards or individual words. And if you just do like an Anki deck of like 500 words or like 1,000 words, then you'll start to learn kind of the meaning of kanji by osmosis. You'll start to pick up on what each kanji means without learning it explicitly. So like if you learn the kanji for like the best, saiko, and then you learn the kanji for the worst, saite, then you kind of subconsciously learn that initial kanji, sai, it's this superlative. So it means like either it's like the most extreme, either like the most of something or like the worst of something or, the lowest, the highest, something like that. And even if you don't explicitly study that individual kanji, by studying words that have that kanji in it, you'll start to pick it up over time. And I found that works best. That worked for me. That's what I did. I never studied kanji individually besides what was kind of what I had to do for like homework in my Japanese classes with kind of like the more basic level, like maybe basic to intermediate, but like for advanced kanji, I never studied those individually. I always just studied them within individual words. Wow. Mobik, $50. Thank you very much. Ola from Argentina, thanks for getting me more into Japanese, and now I learned it every single day. My pleasure. I've heard a lot of good things about Argentina as well, actually. I feel like I'm saying this about every country, but I think one of the books that's popular for my generation is this book called The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, I think. And he kind of recommended the whole remote work before it got popular with Corona. Not popular, but necessary with Corona. And he recommended traveling and working from different locations. And the number one country, I believe, that he recommended working from was Argentina, with the number one city being Buenos Aires. So ever since reading that, I was always like, I would like to, it'd be interesting to see why, so to speak, because he doesn't go into too much detail. I'm not sure about your exposure to Mandarin, but thank you again for the donation. That's very generous of you. $50. Thank you. And good luck with your Japanese studies. Not sure about your exposure to Mandarin, but do you think it's plausible to learn it alongside Japanese without confusing characters? Yes, I think it's plausible to learn it without confusing characters, but I'm saying characters specifically. I think that if you try and learn Mandarin and Japanese beyond just their writing systems, like the entire languages, writing, listening, speaking, all the elements of the language, not just writing. If you try and do that with both languages, I think that that's probably not the most effective thing to do. I would, if it were me, I would do one or the other. Because there's a fair number of kanji that I can read, Mandarin or Chinese kanji that I can read just because I've studied Japanese for a long time. So I think that there's a certain, what would you say, overlap? Well, there is a certain amount of overlap, certainly, but I don't think it'd probably be the most effective thing to do in the long term. 日本人です。道元さん、本当に、尊敬します。自分は英会話の講師をしているんですが、道元さんの日本語のレベルと同じぐらい自分の英語を喋れるようになりたいと思っています。本当にかっこいいな。いや、とんでもないです。会話、そこまで上手じゃないんですよね、僕。会話、流暢ではないと思うんですよね。なんだろう、適切な言葉を選ぶのに相当時間がかかります。いつも。でもすごく嬉しいです、そう言われて。で、ちなみに、ここ、書いてないんですけど、音声学とかの勉強したらいいかもしれないですね。発音とかをもうちょっと上手に、上げたいなとか思っているのであれば、発音のレベル。なんだろう、例えば、これすごく簡単な例なんですけれども、T と R が一緒に来ると T の音じゃなくて CH の音になる。だから旅行 travel は travel じゃなくて T の音じゃなくて travel CH の音になるんですよね。travel そういうちょっとしたルール知識があれば結構劇的に変わると思うんですよね。僕はどっちかって言えばそういうのを教えています。日本語のやつ。Why is your voice so small? Is it small? The levels look okay in here. But ありがとうございます。すごく嬉しいです。そこまで上手じゃないと思うんだけどな。Okay. Do you have any tips for building confidence when first starting? When I run into a roadblock, it just deflates my drive. I think the best things for confidence, motivation rather, is to, whenever you're in a situation where you feel like, I don't want to keep studying, find another foreigner that has better Japanese than you. So like the guy that I recently introduced on Twitter, Nick, go to my Twitter and check out his video. His Japanese is phenomenal. It's certainly better than mine. We've got kind of different professions. He's into the music industry. I have more of a, what would you say, writing background, but I have nothing but respect for him. And when I watched his video, I was like, man, I gotta step up my Japanese as well. So I think that watching foreigners that have better Japanese than you, if you can make a rival, that works really well for motivation, I find. 道元さん、おはようございます。私は、図書館で働いていますが、コロナの影響で、閉鎖されて、今日はお休みです。ところで、ジャージャービンクスはなぜみんなから嫌われているのでしょうか？ Why is Jar Jar Binks hated by everyone? なんでだろうね。 声がうるさいから喋り方がなんだろう、あれだからだと思うんだよね。あー日本にいる外国人の、友達と、日本や海外についての YouTube 動画を投稿しています。日本語についてのトピックの時は道元さんの動画を参考にさせてもらっています。いつも楽しい動画をありがとうございます。いつか登録者数が増えたらコラボしてください。Mr. Fuji from Japan. So you're making videos about foreigners in Japan? 日本にいる外国人の友達日本にいる外国人の友達と日本や海外にvideos related to Japan. Okay, I'll try and check out your channel in a bit. But thank you very much for the donation. And thank you as well, Alfred, as well as Rosebud. 朝ごはん何食べましたか？今朝朝ごはん何食べましたか？今日食べてないです。普段僕朝ごはん食べないんですよね。中田敦彦の YouTube 大学普段から僕見ているんですが、断食だったっけ断食ファスティング断食断食か断食についての動画、最近断食だよねごめんなさい失礼しました。2、3本ぐらいアップしたんですよね。それを見てやっぱ朝ごはん食べない方が健康的だなって思うようになって、そこからずっと食べてないです。なんで、基本的に朝ごはん食べないです。断食だと男性同性愛って意味になっちゃいます。断食じゃないですね。じゃあ断食はい。スペイン語ができますか？道元先生。できません。すいません。勉強したんですけど、全部忘れてしまいました。スペイン語を話そうとすると、日本語が出てくるんですよね。スペイン語を話しているつもりでも、日本語しか出てこない。忙しいことが多いや、暇時間がない人はどんな方法で、日本語を勉強するのが効率的ですか？ブラジルから、見ています。So if you don't 時間がないっていう概念によると思うんですけど、基本的にずっと日本語を聞くことをお勧めします。だから例えば家の中にいる時間ずっと日本語を聞いた方がいい。ずっと同じアニメを繰り返して聞くとか、時間がない人でも、車の中通勤とかする時でもバスとか乗ってる時でもその同じアニメのアニメよりドラマとかの方がいいと思うんですが、聞いた方がいいと思います。音の、工程以外のアクセントの、地域的な違いを日本語に感じることはありますか？ありますよ。もちろん、どこだったかな？工程、抑揚がない地域もありますよね。で、もちろん、大阪とか、標準語とかだったら、ファンクション、機能って言うと思うんですよね。機能、function, the function of like a machine or something. 機能。Let me look that up and make sure I'm saying it correctly. Yeah, 機能ですよね。But I think that in Osaka, if you say 機能, it means yesterday. So, I mean, there's a lot of words like that where 地域によってそのアクセントで言葉の意味が変わるっていうことが多いですよね。最も一番 most、最も、道理に、道理にかなっている natural 道理にかなって。Okay. Do you really live in a sushi restaurant? No, I just bought this on Amazon. Okay. Tips for how to learn proper pronunciation, like tongue placement, etc. I break down tongue placement extensively in my pronunciation series on Patreon, patreon.com/Dogen. If you're interested in that, in videos, but like if you want like a book on it instead of, I mean, there's a lot of good books on it. The Sounds of Japanese by Dr. Vance is a good book. If you can read Japanese, then this, 音声を教える. This is a really good book for tongue placement in particular. And it's also, the Japanese in this book is fairly yasashi. It's not that difficult. So even if you don't have a really high understanding of Japanese, like you can still read this, even if you can't read like the NHK Accent Dictionary or like the Shinmeikai Nihongo Accent Jiden. So these might be two potential resources that would be good for you outside of my series. So let's see. 日本人がアニメで、そして一般的に何を言っているのか理解したいだけです。Sorry, I think I missed the first part of your question. スイカは何ですは何ですか？スイカは何ですか？ Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. 呪術廻戦ってアニメを見たことがありますか？今見ています。最近、昨日、一昨日ぐらい見始めました。So, yeah, a lot of people were talking about Jujutsu Kaisen, but I was a bit too busy to watch it for a long time. But now I've been watching. I finally beat Final Fantasy VII, the remake, on hard mode. So instead of playing that when I exercise now on my exercise bike, I watch Jujutsu Kaisen. And I think that the writing, like the dialogue in that, is phenomenal. It's so good. I was really surprised by how good it is. Like there are so many like small lines that as a writer, I'm so like, oh my God, that's such a good line. So like one good example is like, Junpei datta kke? So there's a character that gets, spoilers, there's a character that gets kind of killed early on, but he becomes friends with the protagonist before getting killed. And the friend, his mom gets killed as well. But the mom, before she dies, she says, 学校なんて小さな水槽だったかな水槽に過ぎないよ。あれ今私名言言ったのかな And that writing, I was like, oh my God, that's such good dialogue, like writing. So I was really impressed by that, like much more so than like the, what would you say? The universe or like the fight scenes or anything like that. I've been really, really, really impressed by the dialogue in particular for Jujutsu Kaisen. 2 super chats came in. Hello, what is the name of the orange short story book you had once talked about? Orange short story book? I think it's called Yutsudachi. I think that's what you're talking about. Yutsudachi by Kanehara Hitomi. Great story. A great book. With Spanish, we have it easy as our vowels, our sounds are pretty much the same sound. By the way, Argentina, good for French architecture, good food and everything is cheap. In US equal bad economy. Yeah, Spanish, the vowels in Spanish are essentially identical to the Japanese vowels. So in terms of pronunciation alone, not pitch accent, but pronunciation, Spanish is very similar to Japanese. And most Spanish learners typically have really good Japanese pronunciation from the get-go. Are the best anime all from the 90s? Not all of them. My favorite anime ever, by far, is still Monster. And I think that, I want to say that came out in like the early 2000s. The anime, it might have been the late 90s. One or the other. Have you been watching Those Snow White Notes? It's an amazing music anime about shamisen players. No, but I'll check that out. 道元、クラシックフレーバーについて少しでも話してほしい。クラシックフレーバー、あの動画以外にあんまり話すことないんですけどそのまま経験したことを動画にしただけですあれ以外は彼に会ったことないし。道下さんおはようございます。私は日本語を、専攻する大学生です。YouTube ビデオお疲れ様でした。私の日本語は悪いですね。でも勉強を続けます。いや、全然悪いと思わないです。むしろ専攻とかっていう言葉を知っている時点ですごくレベルが高いと思います。勉強頑張ってください。ありがとうございます。Thank you very much for the super chat, Mary. And good luck with your Japanese studies. ちなみに it might be more natural if you say rather than 私の日本語は悪いですね。Probably more natural if you say 私の日本語は下手ですね。or 自分の日本語は下手ですね。That probably would be more natural. 美濁音すごい綺麗。美濁音難しいですよね。このルールがものすごく複雑なんですよね。だから自分の美濁音時もあれば使わない時もある。結構適当です道元さんはジョジョ見たことありますか？見たことありません。コナーに言わないでください。バレたら多分友達外れなっちゃうと思うんですよね。悪い、下手。Yeah, it's probably more natural. How did your Japanese get to this point? How did you study? Well, I studied really, really hard across many different kind of styles. I did a lot of immersion. I did a lot of flashcards. I did a lot of writing in Japanese. And I think more than anything else, well, not more than anything else, but one thing that certainly helped me a lot, and the guy, Nick, that I talked about earlier in this video, he talked about this in his video as well, but I find that recording yourself speaking Japanese helps a lot with picking up on small things in your Japanese that you didn't realize were mistakes. So like when I do this stream and I speak Japanese, there's some mistakes that I'll make along the way that I'll try and fix as I'm speaking, but beyond that, there are like pronunciation things that I won't notice, but then if I rewatch the video, I will notice. So there's certainly merit in rewatching and listening to your own Japanese voice, or what you sound like when you speak Japanese. One of my friends just said that the stream went down for a second. Hopefully, well, it looks like there's still people coming in. How's it going with the stream? I got two big super chats, by the way. One, singular BDC, much love from Mexico. Is it hard to get citizenship there? Yes, it is very hard to get citizenship here. That said, it's hard to get citizenship in most places. Like it's very hard to get citizenship in America as well. Probably more difficult even than Japan. But it's much more difficult to get citizenship in Japan than it is to just get your foot in the door, so to speak, with like an English teaching job or a Spanish teaching job or something like that. And once you have the foot in your door, your foot in the door, oftentimes there's a lot more opportunities waiting for you there. So yeah, citizenship itself is very difficult, but there are other ways to live in Japan and be happy without getting citizenship. Although I'm actually thinking about getting it. おはようございます。ニュージーランドかな？ニュージャージーから拝見させていただいている大ファンです。道元さんが日本語で執筆されているかと思いますが、 どのようなものを書いてらっしゃるのでしょうか。リンクがあればぜひご共有ください。私はいつか日本語で短編小説を書いてみたいと思います。Probably the number one thing that I would recommend is well, there's two. If you just open Amazon and type in mayonnaise in Japanese, and then there should be an ebook on Japanese called Mayonnaise, and that's one of the short stories that I wrote. And I think that's probably the best short story that I wrote. It's kind of like a coming of youth story, probably more than anything else, but it's also kind of like a comedy, and it's like the entire thing is like a big play on words. That's what I would recommend. But thank you for the donation and good luck with your writing. Not comfortable with Patreon, so here's some super chat money. Yubi. ありがとうございます。Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't like Patreon. I think it might have been related to like the political stuff that happened a few years ago. So I can understand that based on, individuals' preferences. So thank you very much for the donation here. I appreciate it. Wow, singular. Another $50 donation? Thank you. That's crazy. Here in Mexico, it's quite simple to get citizenship. You'll always have a room if you end up in the northern side, and a lot of carne asada, BBQ. Interesting. God, I miss Mexican food so much. Although my wife is a great cook and she makes some killer enchiladas. Okay. 私も道元さんの本読みたいです。読みたい。Amazon でマヨネーズチェックしてください。マヨネーズ。で、外国人の名前出てくると思います。ここで自分の本名あまり言いたくないんですけど、Amazon では本名を使ってました。使っています。更新してないんで、道元にはなってないんです。多分すぐ見つかると思います。Okay, 道元さんについては何を使いますか？ Can I just replace it? 道元さんについてI'm not sure what you're asking in regards to. Can I replace it with what? What exactly? I was just trying to. Sorry, I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to ask. マヨネーズプレイ。あれ、道元さんって本名かと思いました。いや、本名ではないです。本名ではないです。でもなんだろう。自分、言ってしまったらすごく多分、ウィーブだなってバカにされると思うんですけど、道元の方が個人的にしっくりきます。本名よりは。おすすめありがとう。読んでみます。こちらこそありがとうございます。ぜひ、ご感想を聞かせてください。道元先生、の一番好きな曲は何ですか？難しい。I've got two kind of favorite songs. One is called Oblivion by Grimes, and then probably my other favorite song is called 化粧直し by 東京事変 so 椎名林檎 probably my two favorite songs. Grimes, I love Grimes. Her second album in particular, so good. Greetings from Mexico. おはようございます。おはようなのかな？こんばんはかなDo you know many Brazilian people in Japan? I knew a few when I lived in Tokyo, but I don't know any in 大分。化粧直しは名曲ですよね。あれは本当にいい曲ですよね。もう大好き。何回聴いても飽きないっていうか、もう、ボサノバの漢字を使いながら失恋ソングにしているのがやっぱ天才的だと思うんですよね。Do you have any tips for etiquette in Japan? I went to Tokyo and Osaka in 2019, but mostly use Google Translate. British awkwardness doesn't help. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Well, I don't know. Just I think if you try and be conscious of not stepping on people's toes and also not being loud, if you try and be relatively quiet when you're in Japan, I think that that's probably the best kind of general advice I can give to people. Grimes slaps, bruh. She's epic. Yeah. Yeah. 東京事変いいよね。大好きです。ライブ2回行きました。解散する前は。される前は。うん。あと、解散直前にあった、ライブ、いろんな映画館で放送されていたんですが、それにも行きました。大好き、大好きです。化粧直し、東京事変、椎名林檎。うん。最高。なんだろう。日本の音楽の中では、椎名林檎だけなんか抜群っていうか、群を抜けているっていうか全然違うところまで行っていると思うんですよね、個人的には。群を抜いているか抜群ですね。Sorry, I think there was you are my favorite Japanese speaking foreigner YouTuber. Greetings from Canada. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Seijun Park. Hopefully I can continue to be that YouTuber in the future as well. Ohayou gozaimasu. As someone who may be too old for the JET program and not proficient enough with the language for an engineering job, what other opportunities for foreigners would you suggest to look out for? I actually don't think I think they maybe prefer younger people for the JET program, but there was a fair number of people that I met during the Tokyo orientation that were much older than me. So I don't think that there's a restriction on age, but yeah, they probably do tend to prefer younger people. It's hard to say because I don't know what your skill set is, but the general advice that I like to give for people that want to work in Japan is get your foot in the door with language, like teaching English at even like a eikaiwa school, so like an English conversation school, and find out what you want to do and work on any skills that need touching up. So maybe like if you want to do engineering in Japan, but your language isn't there yet, your Japanese isn't there yet, work on your Japanese until you can get to a point where engineering is feasible for you in Japanese. It sounds crazy, but there's a lot of people that do it. Do you dream in Japanese? Yeah, I mean, I dream a fair amount in Japanese. I think most people study foreign language, have dreams in the language that they study. But I think that more than having a dream in Japanese, I think the funniest thing is when you start to have your memories start to change into Japanese. So I've got like a lot of memories of like my family members that can't speak any Japanese, or like my friends from like high school and like middle school. Flow Urban Tutorial, please stop spamming. Yeah, please don't spam. But the funny thing is when you start to get to a certain level in the language, you start to have memories that aren't memories in the language that you're studying, that weren't originally in that language, that become that language. So I've got like a lot of memories of like my best friends that can only speak English and can't speak like a word of Japanese, saying things to me like, yabaku ne? Omae, ii no ka sore? So it's I think that's pretty funny. Oh, Matt versus Japan. Hey, when I speak Japanese in my dreams, I'm always worried if my pitch accent is correct. So Matt versus Japan, for those that don't know, I've done a couple of videos with him, but he's equally, at least as good at Japanese as me, if not better. And he does a better job than me. I concentrate on the pronunciation side of things, but Matt is really good about kind of like a holistic approach for a long-term study path for people that want to get as good at Japanese as possible. So I highly recommend Matt versus Japan's content, and he's a great guy as well. He helped me out when I was in a difficult situation. So yeah, thanks for the shout out and thanks for stopping in, Matt. Glad to have you here, of course. Let's see. So is this tax deductible? Is what? I'll get taxed on the income that I make from this chat is what you're saying. But good morning, Dogen. It's 8:45 here. Good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. Yabaku ne. Matt versus Japan is my nemesis. He motivates me to learn. Yeah, he motivates me to learn too. Like I said, I think that just overall, Matt's Japanese is better than mine. So, 言われないとマットは日本人と区別つきません。ですよね。うん。本当にそう思う。僕の場合は多分30秒以上話していたらすぐに、あ、この人外人だっていうのすぐわかると思うんですけど、マットとかの場合は、Oh, Sora the troll. 来た Hey, dude, thanks so much for stopping in. I want to get in touch with you like now because I've been trying to get in touch with you for a while. Sora, can you write your email address in the chat so that I can like send you an email? Doing your bachelor's degree in Japan as a way to move, live, study, and work here is criminally underrated, especially because an international student, you pay the same tuition as a Japanese student. Yeah. Going to a place like APU, as I talked about in a previous video, is actually a really good way to get your foot in the door. If you're trying to get into Japan for the long run. Because, well, get your foot in the door and set yourself up for the long run, so to speak. But Sora, I'm so happy that you're here. I watched a bunch of your videos recently, when Japanese people say sit. I was cracking up. That's such a good video. I love it. So I definitely want to do a collab with you as well. And I think that just your content in general, I really like it. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe you can't write your chat here because then your email here because then everyone will see it. But how should we get in touch? Message me on Twitter. I've been looking for your Twitter for a bit, but did this freeze? Oh, I think my chat froze for a second. でもいろんな人からメール来そうで怖い。そうだよね。そうだよね。皆さんにバレないように日本語で書きます。自分のチャンネル、わかりました。連絡しますね。Yeah, no Twitter. You should get on Twitter, dude. I think that your content would do really well on Twitter. But メールしますね。ありがとう。Me no Twitter. No. Hey Dogen, I recently started learning Japanese after learning Korean and was shocked at how similar the grammar and the vocab are. Any plans to try your hand at another language ever? No, I think I know that the more I learn any other language besides Japanese, the worse my Japanese gets. And I need my Japanese to be as good as it can be for the work that I do. Yeah. Okay, this. Twitter is trash, don't blame him. Yeah, it can be. It depends on how you use Twitter. Like, I just never check anything on Twitter besides the people that I follow. And if you just do that, then Twitter's actually, I find it to be really, really fun. You could also add each other to Discord. Yeah, okay. YouTube の DM でいいんじゃない？それもありかな。 pants 何色? Yeah, Flo, I'm gonna ask you to. You're still drunk. こんにちは。ブラジルから見ています。ちょっと日本語できますけど、知らなかったり、ちゃんとわからなかったりする、ことがいろいろあります。漢字を勉強するときはあんまり問題ありません。日本語とても綺麗だと思います。簡単、単語を記憶するために、暗記するためにそういうアップで覚えたことを、レビューします。すごいですよ。日本語がとても綺麗だと思います。の方がいいかもしれないね。But thank you very much. YouTube に DM ってなかったような、あったっけ？あったような気がするんだけど、なくなったかもね。I've always wondered how to get started with learning Japanese. There's a famous language school here in Singapore, but I wondered if I should enroll or self-learn. I want to relearn since I forgot it all. What I would do is I would go check out Matt versus Japan, Refold. His site, Refold. I think if you're interested in learning Japanese for the long run and getting to a level as high as you possibly can, Matt's approach, I think, is really, really good. And then if you're interested in like learning Japanese pronunciation specifically, I teach that on my Patreon. So patreon.com/Dogen if anyone wants to check that out. But I don't know. One of the things that I think that Matt and I talked about in one of the videos that we did together is that it can be pretty beneficial to maybe go to like a language school just for like the initial like 2 or 3 months or something like that to kind of get the basics down. That helps a certain kind of person, certainly. Like, as you mentioned, there's a lot of people that just don't know where to get started. It can be like a little bit too overwhelming. Like, where do I get started with all this? But if you do like a little bit in like a structured course, obviously Matt's course is structured as well. But like if you have someone like a teacher that forces you to do homework and stuff like that, at least for the initial month or two, that can certainly be beneficial for some people. But again, for the long term, I think that Matt's approach is probably the best. Refold.la. Okay, haha. Unfortunately, the .com domain was super expensive. Yeah, I imagined it would be. 化粧直しという曲の名前を今初めて道元さんに紹介されて、それを聞いたら最初の20秒惚れました。本当に良かったです。紹介してくれてありがとうございます。日本語下手です。下手ですが分かりづらかったらすみません。いやいや、全然分かります。いや、良かったです。気に入ってもらって。Yeah, it's such a good song, especially if you can speak Japanese, because like the structure of the song and the melody and the composition by itself is incredible. But the fact that it's like a bossa nova song, but then it's also like not a 失恋 song ってなんて言うんだろう英語で失恋 not a breakup song, but 失恋 broken heart. Yeah, like a heartbreak song. Like it's kind of like about breaking up or like missing someone. Yeah, so the song is called 化粧直し. It's probably what's one of my two favorite songs, but the dichotomy between like the happy, upbeat kind of like bossa nova style and then like the lyrics that are like super like not sad isn't the right word, kind of like 寂しいなんて言ったらいいのかな。Anyway, that dichotomy, I really, really like it. Okay, so let me get these super chats real quick. 失恋, I recently learned. Okay, ideas on how to live in Japan. for a year or two aside from Jet. I'd love to live in Japan, but I'm not sold on teaching. I've got passable Japanese. If you're young enough, then it might be like going to a Japanese school, like APU might be an option. But if you're older and you've already went to university, then like I said earlier, I actually think that just getting your foot in the door, doing something like eikaiwa, where you don't have to work a lot, maybe like, I don't know, 5 hours a day or something like that, depending on the job. If you can get a job doing that, oftentimes you'll have enough time on the side to figure out what you want to do in your free time and or develop the skill set necessary to do your true passion. So that's what I would recommend for getting your foot in the door. Do you have a Discord server? Yes and no. I have one for Twitch, but that's the only one that I have. So it's kind of like that's the Dogen Discord server. But Jesus, another $50 donation. That's crazy. Thank you. So many people from so many places love your content. That's very kind of you. But I would say, yeah, melancholic is probably the best word for it. If you want the Dogen Discord server, then probably, go to twitch.tv/Dogen, and then there's a link to that server in there. Okay. I'm going to raise my desk up. My back is starting to hurt. Okay. I'm also going to retweet. I'm probably going to stream actually for like another hour or so because I've got a little bit of extra time today. I'm just going to retweet my tweet real quick so that if anyone's popping into Twitter now, they can see it. Okay. Yoriki Yamaguchi. Thank you very much for the $3. Oh, okay. So it's not $50. It's $5 maybe. Either way, still thank you so much. Okay. 質問あります。日本語の先生から聞いたんですが、あなたって失礼っていうか丁寧な言葉ではないですか？君も上司から部下に使う言葉と聞いたから、大体その言葉を避けています。使わない方がいいね。日本語のいいところは、ほとんどの場合は、ほとんどじゃないかもしれないけど、主語がなくても、代名詞がなくても、言いたいこと伝わるんですよね。So, in English, if you say like, oh, can you copy this for me? You have to say, can you copy this for me? It's necessary to put in the pronoun there. But like in Japanese, you can just say, これコピーしてもらっていい? And if you're talking to someone, they'll immediately understand what you're saying, even though the word for you isn't in there. So, yeah, it is kind of rude to say あなた. Depending on the context, like there's a lot of like couples that use it like once they're married and stuff like that, but it's not something that you would normally use with like your friends in conversation. Something like お前さ, that's like okay for like close friends. And it's maybe even more natural for a lot of situations with close friends. But you got to be careful with words like that because there's a lot of people that like they mistakenly think that they hear words like お前 being used in like conversations among friends and think that it can be used in any situation and then say it to like their girlfriend's mom or something and be like お前の料理おいしいね or something like that. And that's like extremely rude. So, そうだ。うんち漏れそうになってきたので、トイレ行ってご飯食べてきます。頑張ってください。ありがとうございます。漢字で書いてください。ちょっと漢字がないと読みづらいわ。But thanks for stopping in, Sora. I'll certainly contact you and we can do the collab that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Thanks for stopping in again. Enjoy the unchi and poop. And 料理、ご飯。またね。Okay, Holy K Night. 道元さん、斜め、77度の並びって何これ並べて、猫言葉で言えますか？言えるわけないじゃん、これ。ちなみに、クソミラジオデビュー。いや、これ、早口言葉かな？なんだろう、これ。全く言えません。77の7度。並びに泣いて泣く、泣く、七半七。大難なく並べて超長め。長めかな。難しい。無理。Thank you though for the super chat. スパチャありがとうございます。Do you know of any programs beside JET? Interact is another one. I'd like to improve my chances and apply for more than one. I have a teaching experience already. If you have a lot of teaching experience already, then it might be beneficial to try and apply for an international school in Japan. Look up international schools in Tokyo. And if you've got a lot of teaching experience, you might be able to get it might be possible for you to get a job there where the salary is much higher. And probably if you enjoy teaching, it would probably be a more rewarding experience for you. Do you have any tips for language exchange apps for talking to Japanese people? I tried it a while ago, but rarely got past the initial conversation. いやー、そういうアプリは使ったことないんだよね、実は。でもなんだろう、先に話題を決めた方がいいんじゃないかな、多分。話題を決めて、でもなんだろう、自分のレベルによってその話題を決めるっていうのはまずできないっていうレベルもあると思うんですけど、if you can speak Japanese at a certain level, if you can decide what you want to talk about, like 今日は好きな映画について話したいと思います。If you can maybe like talk about movies today, okay, and now we're going to talk about music that we like, and like maybe like another day, talk about like where you want to live in the future or something like that. If you have a concrete thing that you want to talk about, that's probably a better way to get the conversation going rather than just being like, いや、日本語上手ですね。どのぐらい日本語を勉強していますか? Because that's, probably not even that good for studying if you've already had that conversation a lot of times. あんたバカ、ありがとうございます。主語ばっかり、入れられるとイライラするよね。イライラするね。いや、主語を使わない方がいいかもしれないね。その、主語が人である場合は、会話の中ではね。Probably best not to use the subject for people in most normal conversations. You can just leave it out. Brian, thank you. Nemurenu. Do you have any tips for language exchange apps for talking? Oh, yeah, sorry. Brian, I love your skits and thank you for the super chat. And you've been a real inspiration for me. I'm learning Nihongo and hope someday I'll understand basic conversation. Well, basic conversation, you'll get to that point after just studying earnestly for 2 to 3 years. Keep studying, and if you follow like Matt's approach, like an immersion-based approach, and you really listen to as much Japanese possible all the time, you'll get to that point sooner than you think, actually. I'm an independent game developer. Do you think there's a chance or way for me to move to Japan? That's mine and my wife's dream. I'm hopeful, but not real. Well, you could do kind of like what I did and what I've been talking about earlier. You could teach English or Spanish. I think that this is, yeah. You could teach Spanish for like a couple hours a week, maybe. Try and find a job where you teach as little as possible, and or work at another game development company in Japan if you want to keep up that skill set as well. And then on the side, do the game developing, and then you may be able to eventually turn that into your full-time occupation. That said, it is very difficult. I'm going to open the window real quick. It's getting hot in here. Okay, it might be a little bit louder, but it's getting really hot in here, and I don't want to take this off because it looks good with the colors. From the time you started studying, how long did it take you to start speaking Japanese? Does it take a while before you can talk at a basic level? This really depends on the approach that you take. Someone like Matt, and I actually think that this is probably the better approach if you're in it for the long run. Actually, there's something to be said about intentionally not speaking the language and only listening constantly for like the first year or something like that, so that you get so much input that you start to get a feel for it before you start talking. Because depending on, again, the language philosophy or the learning philosophy that you're taking, that you use, there's an argument to be had that if you try and start speaking Japanese at the exact same time that you start studying Japanese, you're more likely to develop bad habits. And I think that there's truth in that argument, that line of reasoning. Mobik, thank you, $10, thank you. I'm learning around 2 hours every single day, weekends even more, 3 times a week. I have a teacher to know more about vocabulary. You think this is a good rhythm? Am I going fast, medium? That sounds like I would say that's a faster than normal pace, but if you want to go even faster, if you just listen to Japanese all the time, if you constantly have a Japanese movie going on in the background, that's an even better way to accelerate your Japanese learning. And if you do that and you meet with your teacher, it'll make the time that you spend with your teacher much more valuable. You'll be able to get more done because you'll have more knowledge that you can leverage during that time with your teacher. Is there any news on the chances of new visas being given to new entries, mainly work visas? What are the chances of new visas being issued this year? Unfortunately, I don't know about that. I think it's probably going to be difficult until there's, what do you say again in English? Herd immunity, mass immunity to coronavirus. But that looks like it's probably not going to happen for a while because, relatively speaking, people here are very careful. So and they always wear masks. So the number of people that get coronavirus to begin with compared to the general population, the size of the country, and compared to a place like America is quite low. And then on top of that, the vaccination rate here is very low as well. So it could be as long as like another year potentially before there's, what would you say again? Herd immunity. I can't remember if that's the right word or not. But I don't expect it happening in at least the next 6 months, unfortunately. Hi, Dogan. Would you say a degree is essential? Would work experience be able to substitute that in looking for careers? I believe, I can't remember who it was. I think I knew someone that, another YouTuber, that didn't have a college degree and came directly to Japan as a YouTuber because their channel was really, really big. So if your skill set is in enough demand, if you've got a large enough audience and or you're a true expert at a particular thing, you can probably get into Japan even without a degree. Granted, that's kind of the overwhelming minority of cases. Okay. Um, 中国語を勉強したことはありますか？いや、ありません。ないです。日本語を勉強しているときに、自分のそのクラスの中に中国人が何人かいたんですよね。で、じゃあちょっと中国語教えてって何回か言ってたんですけど、じゃあ道元これ言ってみてって言われて、それ言ってみるたんびに、いや違いますって言われてたから、もう無理だっていうことをよく分かりました。僕には無理だ。そのなんだろう、トーン、ピッチアクセントじゃなくてトーンを使う言語って僕本当できないんですよね。だからタイ語とかベトナム語とか中国語とか抑揚ね。抑揚は、抑揚っていうのかな。抑揚ってイントネーションじゃなかったっけ？ Tonal language？ 抑揚でしょう。Would you say studying to be an English teacher in Japan is a bad goal, not jet a kaiwa? If you like teaching English and you would be just as happy teaching English outside of Japan, then teaching English in Japan is a good goal. But if you ask yourself, would I be happy being an English teacher in arbitrary example, but Vietnam? Would I be happy teaching English in Argentina? Would I be happy teaching English in 成長ってやつです。成長言語は無理です。僕は。Anyway, if you like teaching English and would be happy teaching English anywhere, then teaching English in Japan is a good idea. But if the only reason you're thinking about teaching English in Japan is because you want to live in Japan because you like things like anime and Japanese culture and the Japanese language, take a step back and think, what do I actually want to do for the rest of my life for work? Figure that out and then try and do that in Japan. Is being vegan in Japan without a kitchen possible? Do you have any advice? Thanks for great content. I'm not a true vegan. I eat fish. But other than that, I'm basically vegan. So I think the term is pescatarian. So I haven't had meat for a while, any kind of meat. But it's quite difficult in like the inaka, like the countryside. But I don't think it's probably that difficult in Tokyo. It's just kind of expensive. So that's good to be aware of. But veganism is becoming more and more popular, I think, each year in Japan for sure. Thank you for this. I'm from an Asian town with many foreign English teachers, and it's heartbreaking to see the children's education suffer because very few are passionate about teaching or English. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be completely frank, I probably should have taken my job as a jet more serious. I mean, I certainly, when I was in the classroom, I tried to, do the best job as possible. But I took, what would you say, kind of a more passive approach. And I let basically the Japanese teachers that I worked with just decide essentially everything. And probably being a more active teacher, taking more initiative with the lessons probably would have been a good idea for the students. That said, I did always try and with the students with the few students that were truly passionate about English, I tried to really help them as much as possible. So, okay. Has speaking Japanese fluently affected the way that you speak English? Yes. There's a lot of words in English that I can't think of quickly because the Japanese word comes up in my mind first. 僕の日本語を含めたいために日本に行こうと思ってるんですが、音楽家として仕事を見つけるのがどれぐらいきついのか心配です。一般の日本人は、西洋音楽に興味がある あるんでしょうか。クラシックギタリストですけど。There's a fair number of Westerners actually that live in Tokyo and live as musicians, as long as they've got like the skill necessary. Like if you can find a band that'll um, take you on as a member, that's probably the best. 含めたいって言わなかったっけ俺。含めたい。日本語を含めたいために。Anyway, it's certainly possible. There's a fair number of musicians that live in深めたいそっか服って言ってたんだよね。服じゃなくて深めたいはい、失礼しました。はい、道元です。よろしくお願いします。There's a fair number of musicians that are foreigners that live in Tokyo. Yeah, sorry. 服めたいになってた。服になってました。服じゃなくて深めたいです。深めたいです。その読み方っていうよりもこの文章の中で深めるっていう言葉が一番適切なのかなって思いながら読んでたんで読み方忘れてしまいました。日本語を深めたいってなんだろう、もうちょっと上手になりたいとかの方が自然なんじゃないかなと思いながら読んでたんで自分が読み方を間違えていたっていうところに気づいてなかったです。Dogen making an error in Japanese. I make errors in Japanese all the time. 理解を深めたかったんでしょうね。日本の映画のおすすめはありますか？12人の優しい日本人。英語と日本語の一番大きな違いは何だと思いますか？なんだろうね。発音で言えば、日本語は肯定があるんですけど、英語の場合は強弱って言うんだっけ強弱でいいかな。強弱。I'm gonna close the window, sorry. なんでこれについて話したことあるんですけど、日本語の場合は全ての音を同じ長さで言うんですよね。明日全部一緒なんですよね、タイミング的に。英語の場合は長い母音があるんですよね。だから tomorrow は真ん中のもが長いんですよね。tomorrow でこれが結構難しいんですよね、日本人にとって。で逆に英語話者にとっては日本語のピッチアクセント、肯定アクセントがすんごく難しいです。Yeah, pitch versus stress. Pitch accent language versus stress accent language. なんだろう。そういう違いが結構大きいと思うんですよね。ただし、その文法とかも根本的に違うから、そういう、なんだろう。いや、その、会話の音とか発音とかっていうよりも、文法の方がもっとその違いが大きいんじゃないとかっていう理論もあり得る。もう、合ってると思う。合ってるっていうか、なんていうのかな。ありだと思います。OK。関西弁は楽しい。関西弁できません。ようやくで良いですよ。成長は正式な言語学校の用語です。できるだけそういう正式、専門的な言葉を使いたいんで、抑揚、 音声学を教えているんで、音声学の中で抑揚、イントネーションとアクセントってもう全然違うんで、その区別をつけないと、自分のコースとかに入っている学生たちが混乱してしまう可能性が結構大きいと思うんですよね。日本語のイントネーションはフラットですとか、これは違うんですよね。イントネーションじゃなくてアクセントがフラット。でもフラットって言ってもフラットな単語もあるっていうことだと思います。平板っていう言葉もあります。イントネーションはだから自分の感情とかをどう言葉に乗せるかっていうことだと思うんですよね。だからなんだろう、挨拶とかっていう言葉はアクセントは挨拶アクセントだけっていうと挨拶なんですけど、例えば怒った時とか挨拶とか質問で言う時挨拶って上がるじゃないですか。そういうイントネーションによる、肯定抑揚の違い、それが抑揚だと思うんですよね。Hey Dogan, are you aware of any good jobs in the fitness industry, weightlifting in Japan, also Beppu known for earthquakes and tsunami? Fitness industry might be difficult. That said, I actually think that there's probably a good opportunity for like a foreigner fitness YouTuber. Like the closest thing that I can imagine to that is Ladybeard, but he's more of like into the idol thing. But like, I certainly think that there's an argument to be had for like, that's a market that's yet to be filled, or like a niche that's yet to be filled. Like a foreigner that teaches weightlifting or does like funny weightlifting skits in Japanese. Dogen, please say, come to English to teach Japan. Please, we need the callback jokes, the elder jokes. Come to English to teach Japan. Hey, Dogen, are you, I already read that, sorry. Thank you both for your donations, by the way. I really appreciate it. スパチャありがとうございます。スパチャありがとうございます。イントネーションとアクセントといった言葉は、混同して使われがち。そうなんです。普段音声学とかっていう文脈の中で話していない限りは両方使うのは自然かなと思うんですけど、音声を教える立場としては混同してはいけない用語なんですよね。Foxin, thank you very much for the donation, by the way. ありがとうございます。Hi Dogen, been a long-time fan and I've been learning Japanese in school for about 2 years. Right now we are at basic kanji. Any good advice? I talked about this earlier, but I think the best way to learn as many kanji as possible is not to study individual kanji, but to study individual words that have multiple kanji in them. So download like an Anki deck, get like an Anki SRS app, and just try and remember as many words as possible. And then even if you don't explicitly remember like saite or like the kanji sai, if you learn saite, saiyaku, saiko, saisho, you'll start to unconsciously learn that sai means like the most. So I think that approach works best it worked best for me. And that's what I would encourage most people to do. You're my favorite YouTuber. Kizuna Ai has nothing on you. Thanks for all the videos. Kizuna Ai is actually, well, not actually. She's really, really entertaining, I think. And なんだろう。めっちゃ面白いと思うんだよね、Kizuna Aiって。作った人ってやっぱ天才だと思うんですよね。天才っていうか、斬新だったんだよね、絆愛の登場。すんごくこういうのもありだなと思いました。道元さんの日本語は上手ですね。あ ありがとうございます。Dogen become a VTuber when? What if I told you I'm already a VTuber? 例文がいきなり最低で笑った。笑った。道元さん、APU で教えてるのいや、教えてないです。APU では学生募集していたんですが、今はもう YouTube だけです。斬新で合ってるよね。斬新。Yeah, 斬新 means like innovative, original, fresh, novel, like 革命的. So I thought that He's Not I was really like, it was like kind of like a fresh new thing in like the YouTube world. Cutting edge is a little bit different. Cutting edge kind of refers to like, well, the most advanced part of a certain thing that's already within the culture or technology. But 斬新, the nuance is more like 今までになかったちょっと、周りと違う。cutting edge is more 先端的だったかな。先端的。It's very, very similar, but slightly different, I think. 斬新 is more like original, like 今までになかった。Yeah, innovative. Yeah. So it's like the difference between innovative and cutting edge. Different, but, somewhat similar. 先進的。先進的。最先端。最先端。最先端。前代未聞だったっけ道元さん、コロナワクチン打ちましたか？いや、まだ打ってないです。ここ、別府ではもう、そもそもないんで、打とうにも打てないんで。Hi, Dogen. Are you aware of the situation with international students in which we've been locked out for over a year now in favor of the Olympics? Yeah, I'm aware of the situation, and I just think that it's a really unfortunate situation. I think that they're doing a disservice to all the international students like you. Obviously, there's a case to be said about, letting new people into the country, but there's also a case to be said about carefully letting new people into the country. And I think that there's, especially for people that take the necessary precautions, like go to Japan, do lockdown, or not lockdown, なんて言うんだっけ? Isolate for 2 weeks and do the whole thing, then I think at least for the students that were already guaranteed a spot in like a Japanese university, that's probably a good idea. 音調言語と言いますね。音調言語。成長言語。成長言語だね。成長言語。別府。日本語ペラペラ。いつか私はペラペラになるぞ。ペラペラではないと思うんですけどね。ペラペラって言ったらなんだろう。すごく流暢に話せるっていうか、自分の考えていることをすごくスムーズに綺麗に言えるっていうニュアンスだと思うんですけど、僕の場合はすんごく会話のリズムが悪いんですよね。英語でもそうなんですけど。あくびまーさんは日本人ですか？あくびまーさん。隔離。隔離だな。Like Matt is certainly, I don't know if Matt's still here or not, but like Matt is much more pera pera than me. Like I have to stop well, in English too, to a certain degree, because I'm just not very articulate in either languages, but I stop a lot in the middle of conversations. 道元さんは声が綺麗ですぜ。綺麗なのかな？綺麗わかんない。自分の声だからあれ、なんとも言えない。Hello, I just started. Thank you for the spacha, super chat spacha. Just started out learning Japanese for the past couple months. Mostly use wani kanji, and aitaki lessons. How do I get better at hearing words and a faster route to success on mastering the language? Listen to as many Japanese, as much Japanese as possible. So yeah, Matt just made a really good point. I think filming long YouTube videos has helped me get better at speaking English. I think that this is a really good point. なんだろう、こう、I should probably try and say this in both English and Japanese, but if there's no demand for you, if you're never forced to be in a spot where you have to articulate your thoughts clearly at a moment's notice in an interesting and convincing way, then when you actually try and do it, it's actually a lot more difficult than most people realize. Well, for some people, for me in particular, it was very difficult. But like if you start doing things like that, like lives like this, or making YouTube videos where you have to like write like an interesting script, it kind of forces you to think about the importance of the words that you choose. So, でも道元さんは発音がめちゃくちゃ綺麗だし、文法もいつも合っていますよ。いつもではないと思うんですけど、発音も前の動画なのかな、前にも言ったことはあるんですけど、発音能力よりは発音知識が高いんですよね、僕は。だから自分の日本語のなんだろう、良くない癖とかどう良くないのかっていうのは完璧に理解してるんですよね。その知識があるから。でも理解しても癖なので、なかなか意識的になんだろう、話さないとそういうところなかなか直せないんですよね。僕の場合は。まあなんだろう、例えばその R、 日本語のラ、リ、ル、ロとか、歩くとか、Sorry, I gotta message my wife real quick. Oatmeal, please. あと、あっていう母音もなんか違うんですよね。たまになんか変な発音でしますよね。なんだろう、綺麗なじゃなくてとかって言ってしまうケースが多いんですよね。Okay, so does Japan have any integration services for mentally challenged adults? I do that for work and I'm curious about how life is for those in the spectrum. お疲れ様。Does Japan have any integration services? Yeah, I think that Japan is actually, there's a fair, sorry, I was thinking about disabilities, but that's different. Mental disabilities are one kind of disability. I was going to say that there's a fair number of like programs that the government has been trying to spearhead in which there's an effort to hire people with disabilities but have otherwise normally functioning brains. So like people that have maybe like a leg disability, maybe like they're in a wheelchair or something like that. There's a pretty good initiative in my understanding for people in that category, but I'm not too sure about mentally challenged adults. Sorry, I'm just not able to give that's not something I know enough about to properly speak about. I apologize for that. 成長のある言語を使う国の人は日本語にも成長と似た、音を感じるようです。確かに。日本人が日本語に、成長がないというのが、おかしいと。日本人が日本語に成長がないっていうのが日本人が 成長じゃなくて抑揚ですよね。例えば、マリコとまゆみという、まゆみね。という名前の、まの字、んまんの字の母音のあは違う音と認識するようです。マリコとまゆみ。どう違うんですか？日本人が日本語に成長がないっていうのおかしいと。例えば、マリコとまゆみという名前のまの字の母音あは違う音として、一緒だと思うんですよね。で、多分なんですけれども、自分の記憶が合っているかどうかちょっとわかんないんですけど、確かまゆこはまゆこ頭高だと思うんですよね。ピッチが違うんじゃない？ピッチなんですよね。みで終わる名前のほとんどは平凡、あの、平板、だから夏美とかまゆみとかみで終わる名前のほとんどは平板なんですよね。こで終わる名前のほとんどは逆に頭高、稽古とか。そう、ピッチの問題だと思うんですよね。母音自体は一緒なんですよね。アクセントが違うだけです。だから発音とアクセントの違いですよね。音の深さが違うらしい。知らんけど。たまに早く話すときは、すべての母音がより口の真ん中あたりで発音するっていう傾向が日本語にはありますけど、そういう話ではないと思うんですよね。このまゆことまゆみの発音。ピッチの違いが、成長の違いと似たようなものってことですかね。そう解釈する人もいると思うんですよね。全て成長とか抑揚とかアクセントとかっていう言葉の定義によるんですよね。みんな多分違う定義持ってると思うんですよね。音声学の中では成長とアクセントと抑揚は全部意味が違うんで、OK おはようございます、道元先生。Hey, Dogen, looking good with the glasses. Thank you. I appreciate it. 大学のオンライン授業みたい。でも確かその名前のピッチ、アクセントのルールとかって結構あるんですよね。結構多くて、例えば名前の由来が動詞から来るときは、その名前が平板だっていうことが多いんですよね。例えば、学ぶじゃなくて学ぶっていうじゃないですか。それは学ぶっていう名前は学ぶっていう動詞から来てるんですよね。で、動詞じゃなくて形容詞から来た場合は逆に頭高、頭高っていうか、頭高だな、頭高が多かったと思うんだけど、起伏式アクセントがある名前になる。だから静かとかっていう名前とか形容詞から来るんですよね。形容詞から来た名前は起伏式アクセントがあります。で、動詞から来た名前のほとんど全部じゃなかったかなは、はじめとか始めるから来てるんですよね。 だから、はじめじゃなくて、はじめです。Okay, anyway, I was talking about some of the rules related to like pitch accent in names in Japanese. めっちゃ面白いじゃん。そうなんです。こういうのめっちゃ勉強になるんですよね。こういうのを自分のシリーズの中で教えています。結構あるんですよね、こういうの。ちょっと気になります。ワイフと話すとき何語を使っていますか？両方使うんですけど、ほとんどの場合は英語ですよね。違うのアクセントも平板から中高にシフトしてる気がします。道元さんはどう思いますか？そう思います。正しいと思います。孫悟空とかどうですか？ちょっとわかんない、その名前ぐらいは。Okay, so pitch accent. Oh, Nick! Hey! Thanks for stopping in. ピッチアクセントめっちゃ苦労しました。いや、今も苦労しています。ですよね。難しいんですよね。So, Nick, I was just talking about, I don't know how long you were in the chat, but I was talking about how there's actually rules. I'll try and explain what I just explained in Japanese in English. There's actually rules in Japanese that can help you determine the pitch accent of someone's name based on what the name is. So like a name that ends with mi, for example, girls' names that end with 最初聞こえてきもしない。最初は聞いてないのかな多分。But thanks for stopping in, Nick. I'll talk about you in a second. But anyway, in a Japanese name like Natsumi, that's a girl's name. Natsumi or Mayumi, that's a girl's name as well. Both end with mi. And girls' names that end with mi, that have 3 beats in them, so again, like Natsumi, Mayumi, they're almost always flat. That have 3 mora. There's another rule that says, mami is an exception because all 2 mora names in Japanese are, all 2 mora names in Japanese are, akemi. Akemi is another really good example. Amy, I'm not sure about Amy. It could be. Nanami, that's another good one as well. All these names, they've got mi at the end, and there are at least 3 mora. So all of these names, Kasumi, that's another good one. Naomi, that's another good one as well. They're all heiban, they're all said with the flat tone. Hitomi, that's another good one as well. So these are all perfect examples of the rule. 逆に、夏木もそうだったと思うんだよね。でも逆に、but then instead of Tomomi, that's another good one as well. If instead of mi, if it ends with like ko, for example, then in the overwhelming majority of cases, then it's going to be, Megumi, that's another good one. Then it's going to be atamadaka. So rather than being flat, it will be, it'll have an accent. So like if you say Naomi, then it's flat. But if you say Naoko, then it has an accent. Naoko. But I have like 2 or 3 lessons dedicated entirely to rules surrounding names in Japanese. The other rule that I just explained, chiemi, The other rule that I just explained is that names that come from adjectives, names that come from adjectives have accents, whereas names that come from verbs don't have accents. So like a name like manabu comes from the verb manabu, which means to learn. So just by looking at the word, you can know that it's said with the heiban pattern. But then a word like, let's see. What was the example that I gave earlier? Shizuka. That Shizuka comes from a keiyoshi, shizuka. So names that come from keiyoshi, so adverbs, they have accents. There was another really good, ちょっと待ってね, names in Japanese script. I'll try and let me look up the lesson real quick. Good to know suffixes. Pitch accent in names. Give me just 1 second, please. Okay, determining the pitch accent of first names. I'm opening the script right now. Oh yeah, so like another good example, a couple more examples. Nozomi, the name Nozomi, you don't say Nozomi, you say Nozomi. And the reason for that is because Nozomi comes from the verb nozomu. Likewise, yeah, so the name, the name Akira, for example, is said Akira with an accent because it comes from the adjective akiraka. So there are concrete rules that you can learn, and this is what I teach in my pitch accent series, that you can. My name Izumi has different pitch as a first name and last name. Izumi wa but there's different rules that you can use to determine the pitch of someone's name, even if you don't hear it. So, hey Dogan, how are you? I'm good. So I just this is the kind of thing that I talk about. その発音はおかしいとか日常的に話すからね。方便混ざるとごちゃごちゃ。人の名前呼ぶときそんなこと何も考えていないけど難しいな。まあこういうのって学びたい人たちだけが学んだらいいと思うんだよね。だからどっちかって言えば俺とか俺みたいな人たちはこういうちょっとしたルールとかを使いたいんですよね。使って少しでも自分の日本語をより高いところに持っていきたいというか、もうちょっと上手になりたいとかって思っているから、こういうルールが好きです。でももちろんこういうのもう複雑すぎ、もういい、こういうのはいらないとかっていう人たちもいると思いますし、そういう考え方もそういう考え方でいいと思います。Anyways, what I was going to talk about though, so Nick, I'm not sure if you're still here or not, but there's a guy that's in chat right now named Nick Channel. And he's probably got the best Japanese I've ever heard for a Westerner. I made a tweet about him yesterday, 2 days ago, I think. His Japanese is incredible. His pronunciation is better than mine. His vocabulary is better than mine. And he's far more ryucho, fluent in terms of eloquent in Japanese than me. Still here, nice. So if you're studying Japanese and maybe you're at a very high level, I would encourage you, or even if you're just studying Japanese at all, I would encourage you to check out Nick's channel because when I watched his video, I was really, really inspired to study harder because his Japanese is just so good. And I reached out to him and maybe Matt and I are going to try and make a video once I've got a little bit more time. I'm a little bit busy right now with filing my American taxes and that kind of thing. Nick, I'm sure that you can relate as you're from Portland, I think you said. But once all this is done, I'd love to do a collab with you. I'd love for you to for your channel to grow. Yeah, Nick Channel. But yeah, he's got a great channel. He's got amazing pronunciation. And it was funny, my wife actually said that she saw something like a TV show that you had been on many, many years ago where you were singing in Japanese. And she was like, yeah, I knew that guy that you were, yeah, Matt's here too. I know that guy that you were talking about because I'd seen him a long time ago. And even then his Japanese was like amazing. And I was like, yep, makes sense. Sorry, I'm going to try and get to these super chats. There was a couple that I missed. Thank you for being awesome. Love that content is enjoyable but informative. No problem. That's kind of like what I try and do. That's one of the things that I try and do. So thank you very much for the donation. Spacha. What's the best way to add でござる to more everyday situations? いや、使わない。日常的に使わない。So, unfortunately, I have to like sign in. I don't know. Open in web browser. I'm afraid that this is going to crash if I try and like sign in within OBS, but I would encourage everyone to check out Nick's channel. It's got an awesome channel, awesome Japanese. If you just type in Nick channel in katakana, I think it'll show up. Or Nick, if you want to leave a comment maybe about like the best way to find your channel. Yeah, Nick channel. I think, yeah, that's probably, it should show up if you look at that. Thank you for inspiring me to continue studying, going on year 2, and I couldn't have gotten there without your advice. Hey, my pleasure. I'm happy to help and inspire as many people as possible. I need to get to Nick's level though before I can inspire more people. Favorite prefecture that's not Tofu, Oita, Kanagawa, or Hokkaido. Kobe. So, 兵庫県かな? 兵庫. I don't remember the correct way to say 兵庫県.ニックさんは日本語を話すときの仕草も日本っぽい、日本人っぽい。道元さんは日本語を話すときの手や首の振る仕草がアメリカっぽい感じがします。そうだろうね。まあそうだろうって言ったらあれなんですけど、自分の仕草、ジェスチャーとかは確か、アメリカ人っぽいと思うんですよね。Yeah, Nick, I'm more than happy to shout out your channel. I mean, like you said in your video, the thing that got you to the level that you are more than anything else, and I think this is true for Matt and me as well, is just hard work. And because again, your Japanese is clearly better than mine. It's like I have to respect how much work that you've put in all over the years. So it's just like, man, this guy's like, you gotta respect the hustle, you know? And then like, I also thought everything that you said in your video was really, 正論だなと思いました. So like, listening to your own Japanese helped a lot over the years. Having that background in music, doing like the acting in general when you were a kid, using エンタメ教科書とかっていうよりもエンタメを使って勉強した方が効果的なんじゃないかなっていうようなことを言ってたと思うんですけど、賛成です。I was fortunate to have just really enjoyed studying. Yeah, I really enjoyed studying as well. Yeah, it's certainly helpful when you actually like studying, but still, I mean, it's clear that you put in a crazy amount of work, and I just got to, respect that and help anyone that's, put in that much work. I'd like to, see them grow as much as possible. And you just seem like a cool dude as well. So yeah, I'd love to collaborate. So, 一番問題が、少ないは一人暮らし？一番問題が少ないは一人暮らし。はい。いつも見ています。道元さん、慶応だったと思うんですけど、文学部で勉強してたんですか？それなら、 先輩です。いや、こういう話をしてしまうと、なんだ、単なるバカだなって多分思われてしまうと思うんですけど、慶応なんですけど、交換留学生として慶応に行ったんですよ。だから、普通の受験勉強とか一切していないんですよ。普通の慶応の学生、慶応生と全然違うんですよね。僕は慶応に入るための勉強必要じゃなかった。ワシントン大学に入ったおかげで何の試験とかもなしに普通に慶応に行けました。慶応の中で文学とかじゃなくて日本語別科を勉強したんで、頭がいいから慶応に行けたんだなとかじゃなくて、ワシントン大学に入れたから慶応にたまたま行けたっていう話なんです。Okay, so, でも文学大好きです。I guess I'm gonna have to work on those English subtitles. Yeah, well, it could even be worth, what would you say, uploading an English version of that same title or that same video that you did, or just like adding, yeah, English subtitles to that video. I certainly think a lot of people could learn from that video. Hello from UW in Seattle. Hey, but you were smart enough to go to Washington U. Yeah, I don't know. ワシントン大学は世界的な、なんだろう、基準で見れば比較的に高い方なんですけど、慶応とか東大とか、東大より高かったかな。慶応とかよりは高いと思うんですけど、もう慶応に行って実感したことは、ここら辺にいる学生が僕より全然頭いいんだなっていうことなんですよね。だからワシントン大学入れたんですけど、なんだろう、慶応の学生の頭の良さの方がよっぽど、高いと思うんですよね。なんだろう、頭の回転がすんごく速かったんだよね。日本人としては、外国の人が名前で呼んでくれること、くれることとか、イントネーションの漢字とか、とても好きですね。親しみがある感じがして。How did you choose your Japanese accent? I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. But I've always consciously tried to study Hyojungo, so standard Japanese, because I personally believe that if you like speak a little bit of Oita Ben, speak a little bit of Kansai Ben, speak a little bit of Kansai Hyojungo, then it makes your Japanese sound fragmented. And when you say things like kino, people might not know if you're saying like yesterday or like function. So, ワシントン大学に入る方が慶応に入るより難しそう。でもこれは道元さんの、謙遜、謙虚ですね。謙遜だったな。いやー、本当にワシントン大学入るのそこまで難しくなかったんだよね。多分なんとなくだけど、慶応だったら授業で多くて1人とか30人のクラスで1人とか学校で何人かっていう感じだと思うんですけど、僕が卒業した高校は、その自分の学年確か400人ぐらいだったかないたと思うんだけど、その中にワシントン大学に行った人たち40人近くいたんじゃないかなと思うんですよね。だからそこまで難しいと思わないんですよね。慶応とか早稲田とか、その推薦で入るのは別として、もしくはその慶応の高校から直接進学する 道は別として、そのセンターで入るのって本当に難しいと思うんですよね。で、The United States、センターみたいな試験があるんですけど、僕そこまで高い点なかったんですよね。平均のちょっと上ぐらいなんですけど、全然そのトップ 10% とかじゃないんですよね。高校の中ではトップ 10% に入ってたんですけど、高校ランクがそもそも低かったんで、普通だったんで、そこまで、難しいと思わないんですよね。ワシントン大学は。一般の日本人に日本語しかできない日本人にとっては難しいと思うんですけど、もちろん英語で受験しなきゃいけないから。Hi Dogen, thank you for the spot chat, Kyle. Hi Dogen, I'm a new Japanese learner who's been studying through Anki. I'm enjoying what immersion content I can find, but quantity is intimidating. Any recommendation for books, music, movies, etc., etc.? I love the channel. I've always felt that the best Japanese movie for learning Japanese is 12人の優しい日本人 because it's a courtroom drama. It's nothing but dialogue from start to finish, and there's younger actors in it, there's older actors in it, and they start talking only in polite Japanese to each other, but as the movie progresses, they start talking other Japanese, like more relaxed Japanese as well. So it's got a good spectrum of Japanese. It's an older movie, so the Japanese in the movie doesn't have as many loan words in it as well, which I like. I don't like so many like gairaigo. What was that movie? Can someone type that? Yeah, someone please type this. 12人の優しい日本人. 12 kind Japanese people, or 12 kind Japanese. 12. The gentle 12 is sometimes how it's translated, but I've always found that that's the best movie. Yeah. 三谷作品有名ですよね。三谷監督。相当面白いんですよね、映画としても。Okay. So, make you move. Does this check mean that you have a YouTube channel as well? I'm not sure what these make you move channel. Oh, are you a VTuber? Jesus, you've got 1 million subs? What are you doing here? Make you move. 面白い. Well, thanks for stopping in. 12人の優しい日本人. Okay. Yeah, The Gentle 12, 1991. Yeah, it's an older movie, but I love it. Beat Saber player. Nice. That's interesting. 舞台も面白かったよ. Yeah, it's just like an interesting movie. Like the plot is quite interesting, and it's so interesting to see how, なんだろう, like the characters change through the movie. Yeah, it's kind of based on like 12 Angry Men, but it's like, I think something might have just come from me. Guys, by the way, I should probably leave in about like 15 minutes or so. I'll probably leave as soon as my wife finishes making my lunch. But just a heads up. 単語の前に、美化語のおがついたらアクセントがどう変わりますか？アクセントルールはありますか？ありますよ。これは僕、敬語とかどっちかって言えば苦手な方なんで、これはかなり慎重に調べたんです。このトピック、この話題は。でもルール結構難しかったと思うんだよね。ちょっと待ってください。新明解日本語アクセント辞典が一番良かったんですけど、例えばなんですけど、動詞があるとします。あるとしましょう。休む。 中高ですよね。So 休む has an accent on the middle. 休む、休む。But if you change this into the お休みなさい or the oh look at this man bragging that he has a wife. なんだったかなお迎えちょっと待ってください。確か元の動詞の、アクセントがどうであれおが前に来るとほとんどの場合は平板になる。ちょっと待ってください。ちょっと今から調べますので。Pitch, accent, using spectrums, nasal sounds, Japanese phonetics clarification, how to pronounce らしい、the money counter. ちょっと待ってくださいね、皆さん。敬語、honorifics, first names. どこだったっけ？すぐ出てくると思います。ちょっと待ってください。Sorry, this is taking so long. I would like to say this though, because it was really interesting. Honorifics? Part 2だったかな？多分。Okay, so let's pull this up real quick. Yeah, so if you take a verb, regardless of the verb, and then you attach o and then naru to the end of it, then it becomes o, and then it stays high until the end, and then it with the accent on the na, お読みになる、お読みになりましたか、お笑いになる. So that's one good example. What was the other one? There was another really good rule. Sorry, I'm not looking at chat right now. Give me 1 second. どこだったかな? Oh, まあいいか、やめようか。Oh, I gotta go get my package too. Sorry, I'll be right back. When a noun that has become a verb is preceded by the honorific o, then the resulting compound tends to be 平板. So 休む is, it has an accent, but it becomes お休み. And other examples of this are お帰り、お祝い、お迎え、お楽しみ。お楽しみもあったっけ？お楽しみ多分例外もあったと思うんだけど、お喜びとか喜ぶとかって言うじゃないですか。アクセントがあるんですよね。喜ぶ。でもそれが名詞になって敬語のおが前に来ると喜ぶがお喜びになるっていうのが一つのルールだったと思うんですよ。ちょっと待ってください。Okay. Twitch はやめたの？いや、やめてないです。ただし、最近 YouTube の生配信してないんで、ちょっとやってみようかなと思いました。I think maybe a super spacha came when I was like, sorry, I meant sometimes people mimic famous person's accent or something. Your voice sounds a bit deeper in Japanese than it does in English. Hard to say. There's like different schools of thought. I tend to think that speaking in maybe a slightly higher voice, slightly emphasis on the slightly, does a good job with pitch accent. It helped me. So Matt, what program do you use for notes? You pulled up those rules really quickly. I use Alfred. It's exclusive to Mac, but I think that you said that you got like a MacBook Air fairly recently. So definitely check out Alfred. It's like a godsend. Sorry, one second. Okay, guys, but my wife finally, or not finally, but my wife has finished making lunch. So I'm going to end this stream here. Thanks to everyone that came out. I really had a great time this stream. I definitely needed this. It was great seeing everyone here. Matt versus Japan. Check out Matt versus Japan. Check out Sora the Troll. Check out Nick from Nick Channel. I'm not sure if Nick is still here or not. I just saw Matt though. And then also the Beat Saber VTuber as well. Sorry, I can't remember your name. What was it? Make You Move. Make You Move on YouTube. So I got to get going, but yes, my wife is Japanese. Yeah, Make You Move. Thanks to everyone that came out. I'd like to do another live stream in the fairly near future, but I don't like to do it too often on YouTube. So if you're interested in seeing more live streams, maybe come over to my Twitter or Twitch. I try and stream on Twitch at least once a week recently, whereas YouTube, it's more like 週じゃなくて月1回とか2ヶ月に1回とか. So like once every 2 months or something like that. So anyways, I got to get going, but thanks to everyone that came in. And one final note, that kanji, that rule that I just talked about earlier with honorifics, that's the general rule, and there's exceptions to that rule. So just know about that. So like omawari-san, like police officer, that's an exception to that rule. So just be aware that there's exceptions to that rule. Just wanted to say that. So anyways, I got to get going, but thanks to everyone that came out again, and I'll talk to all you guys again soon. Sayonara. Bye-bye. ありがとうございます。楽しかったです。またね. Oh, and the super chat. Sorry, I'm ending the stream right here, but the best way to study kanji, in my opinion, thank you for the super chat, by the way, Calran, is to study individual words that have multiple kanji and study hundreds of them rather than studying kanji themselves, in my opinion. Check out Matt versus Japan. He talks about this as well. Gotta go, guys. Talk to you soon. Sayonara.